The next session will feature Carnatic singer and performer G. Ravi Kiran, who will be in conversation with Akhila Krishnamurthy to bring forth Dikshitar's poetry, his music, and how his writing is also reflective of the times. He will also shed light on the architecture, culture, and customs of the physical space they were located in. Welcome to both of you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're all not very sleepy after a heavy lunch. Okay, so let me dive straight in. A few years ago, when I interviewed Ravi Kiran for the Times of India, I asked him really about why, how he became a Dikshitar seeker, I was thinking today. A bhakta almost, a sishya who's full of awe and wonderment for Muthuswamy Dikshitar, considered to be, for those who don't know, one of the trinity of Carnatic music. Dikshitar, Ravi Kiran told me, was for him love at first sight. Of course, he's been practicing and performing music, but in 2004, he told me that one night at about 10:30 p.m., he heard a composition of Dikshitar, Sri Bhargavi Bhadram in Ragam Mangalam Kaishki, sung by his guru T.M. Krishna. There was a quality he told me about that music, and we will talk about that later, that instantly drew Ravi Kiran into Dikshitar's world. And Ravi tells me that he remembers listening to that song in loop over 40 times until the wee hours of the morning. He knew he was hooked to Dikshitar. With a performance career that spans over 2 decades, Ravi Kiran also wears the hat of a documentarian and a curator through his initiative Guru Guhamrita. Now, the endeavor of this trust is to individually and collectively search, seek out, document, share the majesty, beauty, and magic of the music of Dikshitar in ways that we continue to marvel at Dikshitar's mastery and his compositions. Today, nearly 250 years later since he was born, here we are at a poetry festival in Bangalore in a very urban setting, discussing Dikshitar, his poetry, and the sound of his music. Very, very warm welcome to you, Ravi.
Thank you. Pleasure being here.
So I remember recently, in the backdrop of Dikshitar's 249th birth anniversary, I talked to T.M. Krishna, and I remember him telling me that Dikshitar lives on through his sound. What is that sound? I know it's a very, very big question, but I thought it might perfectly set the context or the mood for this conversation. What is that sound, and why is it that sound so distinct?
First of all, hi, good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure being here. I'm not a poet, and so it feels a little daunting and unnerving to be in the midst of many poets. But Akhila, to answer your question, the sound. You know, when you learn a lot from kids, and when you observe little children, I have 2 kids of my own, and when they were growing up, they could, even without defining what is classical music, or what is Carnatic music, what Hindustan, what's film music, when you play a recording of classical music, they would instantly say this is Appa music. Or they would instantly sway because they felt that it was something that was a more popular variety, probably. No? Right. So intrinsically, I think all of us connect to the sound, to the basic soundscape, to the basic, whatever we call it. But we can connect to a sound of, and every genre of music is identified by its inherent sound, right? And that's very important, which is why when we try to push the boundaries of genres, there is always inherent awareness that one must do it without compromising on the sound of music. Right? So if we go back to the composers of Carnatic classical music, the Carnatic music as we appreciate it today, which has evolved over the past 200 years in the terms of the content that we present on stage today, is influenced by 3 composers, largely, Tyagaraja, Muthuswamy Dikshitar, and Shyama Shastri. And each of them, the reason they were clubbed together as, what do we call them, Trinity, Mummurti, or whatever term we use them to club it in our obsession to categorize and box and club them, right? We need a tag, right? So when we club them, we see that interestingly, each of them has a different sounding. A Tyagaraja Kirtanam sounds different than a Dikshitar Kirtanam. It's very difficult to verbally describe what that feeling is. I think you just have to go through the, when you listen to a Dikshitar Kirtanam, you know this is, now how you recognize it, of course, superficially, the lyric is largely Sanskrit based. So that is the superficial descriptor, physical description of it, right? Physical attributes, if you see, it's largely in Sanskrit. It appears to be rendered today in a tempo which is probably slightly slower than other compositions which are being rendered today of other composers. The overall pace of the kirtanam, of the song. And it has certain very obvious characteristics. There is what we call a Madhyama Kala. There is a passage of the song that suddenly speeds up. There are passages of the songs that are long-winded. So these are physical attributes of what I would call, which make up the soundscape of Dikshitar.
Right. Do you want to just sing something just to get into the mood of Dikshitar?
Sure. See, Dikshitar, Shama Shastri, Tyagaraja, in Carnatic music we call them Vagyakaras. And that's a very, very unique attribute, and it's something very important to understand. Because in the case of a Vagyakara, a Vak and Gaya, so the lyric and the tune, all right, are both composed by the same person. And that opens up a lot of opportunity, lot of avenues for the composer, and there's more control by the composer to play around with the syllable, the spacing, and the music, right? And each of them influence the other. But
Solopreneur, as they say.
Sorry?
Solopreneur.
Yeah, solo. Yeah. What shall I say? Okay. Hiranmayim Lakshmi Sada Bhajami Hiranmayim Lakshmi Sada Bhajami Hinamanavashrayam Tyajami Hiranmayim Lakshmi Sada Bhajami Hinamanavashrayam Tyajami. It's a simple two-line Pallavi, right? Thank you. Hiranmayim Lakshmim Bhajami Hinamanavashrayam Tyajami.
Right.
Set to Sanskrit.
Yeah.
Right.
But Ravi, since you spoke about Vagyakaras
Yes.
and how they sort of owned both the poetry and the music, in some sense, the poetry and the music are inseparable. So when we're saying Dikshitar, we're talking about poetry and the music.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Do they exist without each other? Like, what would happen then?
It's very difficult to imagine one without the other. In the case of a composition of Vagyakaras. So which means, if I take the same composition, Hiranmayim, I sang this, right? Hiranmayim. If I were to replace these with any other syllables or words, would this composition be the same? I mean, obviously not. But would it connect with me in the same way? Probably not.
Right.
So there's something that happens in the case of art music compositions like these, where the syllable and the music, the way they Hiran Mayim. So it's all in the spacing between the two syllables, which translates to spaces between two notes, right? So it's very difficult to separate the two.
Absolutely. Ravi, this morning we were talking about the whole notion of context and music. Now, the context in which this poetry was set and the music was written, right? They were a completely different time period. And we're singing it so many years later. Let's talk a bit about this.
No, it's true. So, if you take any composer, now Dikshitar, like you mentioned, Akhila, we are in the 250th year. He was born in 1775 in a small town in south of India, Tiruvarur. Now he composed in that, he belonged to a certain social strata, he belonged to a certain social context. he went through a certain academic rigor. Right? If you look at his biographies, by the age of 16, he has learned Sanskrit, he has learned music, he's learned astrology. These are things that were probably done more frequently, back in the day. So there's a lot of academic rigor, right?
For sure.
Just to demystify a lot of.
yeah.
So there was a lot of academic rigor that went behind the making of a genius. Now, can this context, and he composed in this context.
Right.
He composed about, there's no two thoughts that he composed on the Hindu pantheon of gods, for example. Hiranmayim Lakshmi, it's on Lakshmi. And he's composed in the Carnatic art form, as we know of it today. Now, are the two inseparable is your question. They are inseparable to an extent. But the very fact that today we are still singing 250 years beyond Dikshitar, we probably, if you take universally, I don't think we live in the same social context that Dikshitar would have lived through. Now, the work of art is the outpouring of his context and his music. If I take out the context, am I able to appreciate the music? That's a question I have to ask myself.
Right.
And if can the music exist without the context?
Right.
Is the context relevant to the music? I would say we have to accept it, that it is a part of the music. Right? The music came from the context. But if today, can I disassociate the context from the music and appreciate it for music's sake? That's a question that we have to ask ourselves.
Right.
Should we do it? I don't know. Maybe, because what happens if I don't subscribe to the context?
Right.
Right? I don't want it to be an inhibition for me to appreciate the music.
Right.
So can I look at this as a work of art and appreciate for the music's sake? If I appreciate the context, I have two things to appreciate. But if I'm looking at it from a musical perspective, because at the end of the day, it was a musical masterpiece. It was a musical work of art, right?
Yeah.
I must make this point. From what we observe as musicians, I'm a musician. From what we observe, one doesn't find even Tyagaraja or Dikshitar or Shama Shastri being addressed as poets. Even in the world of Telugu literature or Sanskrit literature, right? Yeah. Tyagaraja composed largely in Telugu, Dikshitar composed largely in Sanskrit. One would not address them as poets, right? Yeah. In Telugu, you have Annamacharya Sankirtanam, Bhadrachalam, those, which are considered more poetic. I mean, I won't want to use this. I want to use those terms loosely, but then but in today's context, that's how it's perceived.
Right.
So they were Vagyakaras, again, coming back to the thing. So going to your question, I mean, it's very difficult for one to separate the context from the music, but I honestly feel that the music exists by itself without the context. Now, this composition that I sang, literally, what's the meaning, right? Hiranmayim Lakshmi Bhajami. I worship Lakshmi. Heenamana Vashrayam Tyajami. I don't want to bow down before lowly mortals. I don't want to seek the refuge of lowly mortals. Now, this is a statement. This is actually one of the few compositions where Dikshitar is making a statement.
Right.
Large number of compositions are descriptive in nature.
Right.
The god is like this. Vatapi Ganapatim Bhajeham Vatapi Ganapatim Bhaje. I worship Vatapi Ganapati. That's it. But this composition, for example, he's making a statement that I want to shun seeking their patronage. Right? There are stories attributed around it which have evolved over time. Let's not get into that.
Right.
But now, if you look at the second line, Heenamanavashrayam Tyajami. So now I can go out on a limb and interpret it as, oh, he's talking about lowly mortals and the music is going low.
Absolutely.
You can't deny that.
Yeah.
See, I can't say that now I don't want to look at the text at all. It doesn't mean anything to me. I will look only at the music. So that it's difficult to separate the two, right?
Sure, yeah.
But there are examples like this where it's very obvious that the music and the lyrical meaning are hand in glove.
Right.
But that's not always the case.
Right.
right? If I take another composition, let's take another composition. Jambupate Mam Pahi Nijananda Amrita Bodham Dehi Jambupate. It's a completely descriptive composition. I bowed down before Jambupate. Who's this? Who's that? No, a set of adjectives. Right? Does that not strike any emotion in me? Absolutely not. It strikes a wave of emotions in me. Right? So where is that emotion coming from? It's coming from the music, from the syllables, and also an interplay between the two. Right? And how Dikshitar uses these constructs to create that magic. For example, I think it's a good segue to probably could talk about this composition, right? This composition, again, we look at Dikshitar as from a poetic perspective. Jambupate Mampahi. It is said to be a composition on a particular deity near present-day Trichy, Thiruvanekkaval, and it is attributed. There are a set of 5 compositions that have been grouped together as the Panchabhuta Kirtanams, Panchabhuta Linga Kirtanams, Panchabhuta Kirtanams. So each of these compositions, there are a set of 5 of them, which are set, not attributions, actually they're very clear. Each of them is on one element and a form of Shiva that is worshipped in that element in a different temple, right? This one is on the water element. Now, how much ever you try to dissociate the lyrical aspect of it, it is, to me at least, it's been impossible to not feel the flow and the passage of water as this Kirti moves, right? Ambujasanadi Sakala Devanamana Tumburunuta Hridayata Popashamana. Even the words used are all water motifs. Right. The name of this raga is the Carnatic version of Yamuna Kalyani. Yamuna being a name of a river. The composition itself is set to the water element. The form of Shiva is called Appulinga. That is water, the linga of belonging to the water element. Yamuna Kalyani is the name of the raga, water motif. Appulinga, the name of the form of Shiva, is water. Anupallavi, the Anupallavi, for the words that I just sang, Ambuja Sanadi, lotus. Ambuja means lotus. The next line, Ambuja Sanadi Nuta, Kam Tumburu Nuta Hridayata Popashaman. See, this is another thing with Vagyakara music. You cannot get the lyrics without singing it. Without singing it. You have to sing it. That's where you get it, right? There's no other way you get it. Tumburu Nuta Hridaya Tapopashamana. Again, a water motif. Something that quells the fire of tapa. Again, there's a water element to it. Next line. Ambudhi Ganga Kaveri Yamuna. Ambudhi Ganga Kaveri Yamuna. Again, all water motifs. So this whole composition, if you see, this is where a lyrical, you can see the poetic side of Dikshitar, where great people wear many hats. We cannot box them into one one clear category. So here you have Dikshitar playing the role of wearing a really creative wordsmith with a play of words, where everything has a water element. The music flows in that, and if you, it flows, it just flows. Yamuna Kalyani, Ambujas, you see the text, there are myriad water motifs that you find.
Well, the grandness is because of the music. Have you been to this temple?
Yes.
And how grand is the temple?
So this is where this is where again our problems appear. Our problems, not Dikshitar's problems. Now you listen to this composition. It's a magnum opus. It's a grand composition. Now the human tendency, at least for me, was that it's a grand composition. It's going to be a sprawling temple. Those of you are laughing have been to this temple. It's a small one. Physically, it's a small. Now, does it take away the sanctity of the kshetra of the temple? No. But physically, it's a very small temple. It's not a temple complex per se. So it's not like the other temple complexes in the Chola kingdom. For example, you have the Tanjavur area, the Tiruvarur area. You have a lot of temples, sprawling temple complexes like the Tiruvarur temple. Here's a small temple. Now what do I make of it? Right? Because if in my mind, I build this grand canvas which is created by the composition. Now I go to this and I see this small temple. Now easy for me to normalize it by saying, in that time it was a very big temple. No. Nobody destroyed it. Nobody did. It was all like this only. It was all, sorry. It was all the same. Okay? No, it was all the same temple. Does that take away the beauty of the temple? No. But these are things that we kind of extrapolate ourselves, and we get ourselves into, we do this value addition that is sometimes problematic.
Yeah, that's for another conversation. But I want to ask you this one word that I've been toying with from yesterday, which is the idea of corpus. Dikshitar's corpus, and how we've sort of inherited this corpus.
Dikshitar's corpus, oh my God, that's a huge inheritance. I mean, we have not inherited it, honestly. I don't think so. It's too big a word, because inheritance gives you a sense of ownership. I think it's far from that. We are custodians. We are custodians of the art form. I mean, it's like passing the parcel. Somebody has passed on the parcel to you. You pass it on. Please pass it on without damaging the parcel. Make your own parcels.
Chinese whispers, man.
Yeah, not like Chinese whispers. So, any art form, I mean, this applies to any art form, I'm pretty sure. We are custodians of it. And our goal should be to be as physically true as... Art forms are inherently dynamic. I'm not denying that we are singing the same way that Dikshitar would have sung 200 years ago. No. Because music has evolved, the grammar has evolved. I'm not saying that, but to the best extent possible, can I be true and honest, again, without doing too much value addition, can I be true and honest to the content that's passed on to me? That's the only thing I can do. Absolutely. Right? Without trying to superimpose my own value systems and my own theories on top of the works of Dikshitar. Right. If you look at him also, right, because you talked about corpus, as a composer, like any great composer, any great artist, he has toyed with multiple genres. He's not one monochromatic composer who composed only Sanskrit, only praising one god. Far from it. You have, now the genre of composition that I sang, Hiranmayim Lakshmim, was one of the few compositions where he's making a statement. These are overtly emotional statements. It's very easily understood. There are academic exercises that he indulged in. There are, in Carnatic music, there's something called 72 melas, and then there's another parallel version called 72 raganga ragas, separate discussion. But he has made an explicit attempt to compose in each of these 72 ragas. And he composes the 72nd one also saying that I have composed in all the 72. So he's almost like he says that it's a statement. Okay. So this is him being an academician, practically. Then there is what we call as Notuswarams today.
Of course. You should probably sing some.
Yeah, of course. So if anybody is familiar with national anthems of other countries, you will connect to this. Santatam pahi mam sangeeta shamale सन्ततं पाहि मां सङ्गीतश्यामळे सर्वाधारे जननि सर्वाधारे सर्वाधारे जननि सर्वाधारे जननि चिन्तितार्थप्रदे चिद्रूपिणी शिवे चिन्तितार्थप्रदे चिद्रूपिणी शिवे श्रीगुरुगुहसेविते शिवमोहाकारे सन्ततं पाहि माम्. Any idea which song this resembles? The tune? Sorry? You God Save the Queen. This is Dikshitar taking God Save the Queen and putting an Indian lyrics to it. Again, very eclectic for somebody sitting in 1775, late 18th century.
Do you just want to tell us how he composed the Muthuswarams before we, because that's a really interesting story.
Yeah, it's so Dikshitar and his family lived in the outskirts of present-day Madras, present-day Chennai, right? An area called Manali, right? And towards the north of present-day Chennai. And the British who were there in the then Madras presidency, they had their troops and they had their band playing many such melodies in the fort area of Chennai. And it is said that Dikshitar's father used to take them to the fort area. It's obvious, but that fort area was the business hub and the town area. And he used to take them there, and he was influenced by these melodies, and he composed sahityam for it. Now this is where actually the music is somebody else's. Yeah. The lyric is his. So a very small corpus of his compositions are of this nature. Yeah. But again, is it identical to God Save the Queen? Obviously the rhythm and the flow of the syllables are different. But it is definitely inspired by God Save the Queen. Then the other genre of compositions are the Kshetra compositions, where Dikshitar goes to a temple, and this is a small percentage of his compositions, not all, where he goes to temples largely in and around the Chola, the Tanjore area, and these temples are even today not just, you call them kshetras, and it's a term loosely, we call them temples loosely, but kshetras, which are attributed by multiple factors. There's always a river, water body associated with the kshetra, there's a deity associated with the kshetra, there is a tree associated with the kshetra, there is usually a Purana or a Sthala Purana or a local legend associated with the kshetra. There are festivities associated with the kshetra. There are multiple attributes to every kshetra. Now he visits many kshetras, and when he visits them, he is composed, describing and giving us a Wikipedia entry for the kshetra practically.
Fantastic.
In today's context, it's absolutely Wikipedia entry. Yeah. Down to the last details. I'll sing and show you one small element.
Sure.
This is a composition called Bhaktavatssalam Abhishekavalli Yuktam, and a rare raga called Vamshavati. Bhaktavatssalam Abhishekavalli Yuktam Bhajeham Nityam. This is the composition. Now, one hallmark of the many constructs that Dikshitar uses in his compositions, right, is what we call as a Madhyama Kala, where the lyrics, more lyrics are fit into one cycle of the tala, right? And it creates an illusion of speed. It's actually not fast. You have more lyrical syllables. It appears. It's like taking more steps between two. Like you feel like you're walking fast. You're not walking fast, right? So, so the last portion of this composition has Shashanka Guru Talpadosha Haradarsha Pushkarani Tata Paschima Bhaga Sushobhitotpala Vataka Sthitam Suramaya Madhumakshikaradhitam Bhaktavatssalam Shashanka Guru Talpadosha Haradarsha Pushkarani Tata Paschima Bhaga Sushobhitotpala Vataka Sthitam Suramaya Madhumakshikaradhitam.
Congratulations.
I somehow remembered it. No, I was singing it in my mind. There was no way I would have got the lyrics without that. But on that note, I'll tell you one small trick that all musicians use, Carnatic musicians use,
Okay,
to
tell
remember the Anupallavi of any song. So you sing a Pallavi, and because that segues into a construct that we use in compositions. Any Carnatic music, Kirtana, as we call it, has to have what you call as Dvitiya Akshara Prasa. So which is the second syllable of the Pallavi and the second syllable, lyrical syllable of the Anupallavi has to be the same. You take any composition of Carnatic music, it's always 100% it's applicable. Vata Piganapta Bhutadi Samsevit Hiranmayi Chiratara Ra. Always. It's impossible. Otherwise,
Hey,
it's not
but
a
it's
Carnatic.
too much to just remember that one syllable.
No, but you know that it's something ta. You know it's something ta. So once you do that,
Ravi,
you get it.
This is what this mastery of a musician is. Clearly, it's not meant for the common person, but well, go on with Dikshitar's corpus. Yeah.
So in this last Madhyama Kala composition, there is an entire history, architecture, and local legend summarized in 2 lines. Shashanka Guru Talpa Doshahara. Shashanka Guru Talpa Doshahara. Now in Tirukkannamangai, where this song is attributed on, is set in, it is said in the local legend, and that is validated even today. If you go to the temple, even a non-musician, non-Carnatic music knowing priest or anybody else would also recite this local legend. So they're all aware of it.
Okay.
It's not something conceived by Dikshitar.
Okay.
It is said that the moon was cursed by Guru, the Brihaspati, the celestial god.
Yeah.
And because he was cursed, and there's a story behind that, but because he was cursed, it is said that he came and dipped into the holy, the Kalyani that is there in the water body that's there inside the temple, and he said that he was cured of the dosha. Shashanka Guru Talpa Doshahara Darsha Pushkarani. The name of the Pushkarani even till date is the board is Darsha Pushkarani. This is composed 200 years ago, mind you, right? It is said Darsha Pushkarani. So name of the Pushkarani, now I learned from that. Now I don't, let's say I am a student of music, I don't know anything about the Kshetra.
Right.
Shashanka Guru, now I learned about the local legend.
Right.
Darsha Pushkarani Tata.
Right.
So I know that name of the Pushkarani is Darsha. Pushkarani is the water body inside. Sushobhitotpalavaka sthitam Darsha Pushkarani Tata Paschima Bhaga Sushobhitotpalavaka sthitam. It says to the west of this Pushkarani, there is a Vimana, there is a tower, which is of the type of the Utpalavataka type style. Again, that's a architectural. There are Pranavakara Vimana, Utpalavataka. It's inverted lily. So he gives the technical term for the type of the Gopuram of the Vimana that we see. Sushobhitotpalavataka sthitam. Okay, what next? Suramaya madhumakshikaradhitam. Suramaya madhumakshikaradhitam. Madhumakshika. So even today, if you go to this particular temple, there is a beehive that is worshipped in the sanctum sanctorum of the consort. Okay, Abhishekavalli was the name of the consort. And there is a beehive even today. You can see it. We have in fact shot it in our documentary that we've done, right? Dikshita Kshetra Darshanam that we do. We've shot it. From outside, of course, you can see the bees entering and leaving. It's worshipped till date. And the Sthala Purana says that Lakshmi got married to Vishnu in this kshetra. And it is said that the gods came to attend the wedding in this beautiful kshetra. And they were so enamored by the sheer beauty of this temple and the surrounding areas that they refused to leave. So they said, we will stay back here as bees. Suramaya, so Suras, the gods. Suramaya madhumakshika aradhitam. Madhumakshika aradhitam. So the honeybee, the bees that are there even till date are forms of Suras, celestial beings, and they are being worshipped even today. And the one who's worshipped like that is Bhakta Vatsalam Abhishek. So in 2 lines, you have architecture, local legend, Sthala Purana, name of the Pushkarani, location. I'm telling you, it's a Wikipedia entry.
Fantastic.
Much before Wikipedia was invented.
Well, Wikipedia entry, but Ravi, through your idea, the Dikshita Kshetram, through your Guru Guhamrita, you've also been doing a mini Wikipedia video documentaries of sorts.
Yeah, absolutely. No, thanks for bringing that up.
I think we should just probably play an
How
excerpt.
much time do we have?
Okay, so let's play that excerpt and we'll just talk for a minute about it. Chaitanya, can I please request you to play that excerpt?
So while he brings it up, I'll just
Similar.
This is a video, right? So while he brings it up, I'll just tell you about this. Dikshita Kshetra Darshanam is a project that we've been doing for the past couple of years. And it's a project where we travel to the kshetras where the Dikshitar is supposed to compose these compositions and we try to capture the essence of the kshetra, and a collaborator and I, Madhusudan and I, we discuss the various aspects of the composition. We try to unravel whatever we can of the composition, sitting within the precincts of these compositions. So hopefully it serves as one additional documentation. So,
Similarly, the way the raga flows in this Anupallavi is also interesting. If you see, there is the last syllable in every section is an ascending order. So, Sada Shrita Kalpa Vriksha Samuham Pa Sharanagata Devata Samuham Da Udajakrita Namate Yavaham Sa Chidanandamrita Pravaham Ri. So it's Padasari Sapenchaleshwaram Chamatkara Gopaladi Prasada Karanani Punamahalingam Chamatkara Gopaladi Prasada Karanani Punamahalingam Chayarahita Deepa Prakasha Garbha Griha Madhyarangam Chayarahita Deepa Prakasha Garbha Griha Madhyarangam. Similarly,
of course, there are
thank
many
you.
more constructs like this. There is Swarakshara, where the syllable, again, the hallmarks of a Vagyakara, right?
Of course.
Whereas Sada, I sang there,
Yeah,
Sada. So Da and Da, the Swara is the same. So again, these are levers that the Vagyakara and the genius of Dikshitar highlights. There are other constructs, I just want to put it on record, right? There's Swarakshara, Madhyamakala we spoke about. There's also yatis that are used. So there are, I can sing and show when we have time, but there are compositions where specific yatis, so by yati, again it's a deep term, but for example, Agaraja Yoga Vaibhavam, Raja Yoga Vaibhavam, Yoga Vaibhavam, Vaibhavam, Bhavam, Vamtya. So Agaraja Yoga Vaibhavam, Raja Yoga Vaibhavam, Yoga Vaibhavam, Vaibhavam, Bhavam, Vam, Tyagaraja Yoga. This is a construct that where you reduce it's called a Gop Uchayati, looks like a cow's tail. How the music and the lyric reduces. And the opposite of that happens in the same composition, but that's for some other day. But that's called a Shroto Vahayati, where how the river expands.
There's expansion.
So many such constructs are used. So the genius of a great composer like Dikshitar cannot be, again, categorized as he's a poet, he's a musician, he's a academician, he's multifaceted.
Just one last thing also, the quality of virality about Dikshitar's music.
Oh yeah. So this is an anecdote that happened with one of my students who lives outside of India, and I was teaching him this particular 10-year-old child. I was teaching this composition, happens to be the first composition that Dikshitar composed, and I'll sing and show this because I'll take a minute. Maya karya kalanahino Mamaka sahasra kamalasino Madhurya ganamritapano Madhavatya bhayavara pradano Maya shabalita Brahmarupa. Now this small bit is from the first composition of Dikshitar. If you write down the notation of this line, if you look at the musical notes of this line, it's a palindrome. So every line, now this is the opposite, it's not lyrical play, it's a musical play, where the lyric is Maya, Maya Karya Kalana Hino. There's nothing palindromic in the lyric. But if you see the musical notation, Maya Karya Kalan Ma Ga Ma Pa Da Pa Ma Ga Ma. If you write it down, read it from right to left, it's Ma Ga Ma Pa Ma Da Pa Ma. And it happens the next 4 lines come continuously. Ma Ma Pa Ma Ga Da Pa Ma. Pa starts with Pa, ends with Pa, it goes Madhurya Ganamrita no Da Ni Sa. So I was just explaining to this child who was outside of, who's not brought up in India, and at the end of it, the child was genuinely surprised and delighted, and he said, "That is so cool! It's such a cool composition." Now it might sound cliche, yeah, right? But to me, at that point of time, what struck me was we are here 200 years. After since he moved on, right? Practically, 1835 he moved on, and a child sitting somewhere in the corner of somewhere in Europe says it's cool.
Yeah.
If this isn't virality, what is, right? It's not about becoming viral overnight.
Yeah.
You would not see 2 million views on a Dikshitar composition overnight, right? In 24 hours. But 200 years later, if a child is able to listen to it, appreciate it, and just exclaim,
#cool Dikshitar. Thank you, Ravi.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bangalore Poetry
Thank you.
Festival.
Thank you,
See you
Akhila.
all soon. Yeah.
Who have actually grown up with Dikshitar, and for those who are being introduced to him for the first time, this was equally enlightening, and thank you for that rich treasure of knowledge, Ravi Kiran. Thank you so much.